Of course, it's weekend sport, and as always, we try and bring you the best of the best, and we've got the best of the best. Probably the best trainer in the country, Colin Nathan. Colin, thank you for taking the time to put us out in your gym here and obviously have a chat. How has 2017 been for you, sir?
So it started a little bit rocky with Rainer Liebenberg losing actually was a split decision. It was announced as a unanimous decision to Enrico Cooling. That was a bit tough. Yep. And then we lost, with Warren Joubert for his challenge in Scotland against Josh Taylor. But we've come back really strong. I mean, we produced Lerato Dlamini winning the IBF World Youth Featherweight Championship, knocking out Sitambili Bam in Bloemfontein Free State, and Heikki Butler becoming world champion again. Maruti Mtulani coming back after a long absence and looking devastating, knocking out Genesis Lebranza. Simpiu Kongton defending and retaining his world championship. And now very recently, this last weekend, we had little DJ Krill gate crashing the world ratings by beating Dexter Elemento for the WBC International Mini Flyweight Championship. So thank God so far it's been a great year. Yeah, still, like I said, it's still a bit rocky, but we're rocking it now.
I love that you've mentioned that, obviously, and speaking to a lot of the other fighters, it's a hotbed here. The best fighters fight here, and the guys generally seem to be far more relaxed and happier than anywhere else, in the country. What do you attribute that to? And is it difficult for you?
Well, listen, I mean, you're dealing with a lot of fighters. We have 15 fighters on our books, and unfortunately or fortunately, I've had to part ways with certain guys, and one or two guys have left me, and I've asked one or two guys to leave me. But that's the nature of the game. You can't get on with everyone, and not everyone's going to be able to become a champion, and that's just life, and that's just boxing. But what I attribute it to, it's a good question. I'm very transparent with my guys, and my guys know where they stand with me. I give 100%, and I expect 100%. And there's a good ethos and feel to the gym. There's no bad attitudes. The guys come in, and it's a family environment. I don't hang out with my fighters socially. There has to be that separation. But my fighters are my second family, and they know that I'll fight every inch for them. You've seen me in the corner, get in trouble from the referees and the fight supervisor, keep it down, Colin. But the truth of it is, I love the sport of boxing, and I will fight every inch for my fighters. So going back to your initial question, so I think it's transparency, the fact that I'm approachable, and there's a good vibe with my fighters. They work hard, and there's just a family feel to the gym.
Off air, and a number of times whenever we've chatted, you've always sort of alluded to the fact that you've kind of built this family environment, at the gym. A masking, the likes of Freddie Roach and what they're doing, your mentor. How difficult is it for you at times, to perhaps keep that family, intact? Because you've got 15 guys, different attitudes, different aspirations, all want to be the best.
And different personalities as well.
Correct, yeah.
So it's a good question. My prelim fighters train collectively at 1 o'clock, Monday through to Thursday. And the fighters that have got big fights coming up, I train individually. I do a fair amount of one-on-one coaching commercially, but I've kind of taken 2 steps back on that because I need to focus on my career as a boxing trainer and as a boxing manager. And the fact that I've been able to do that, I've seen the attitudes of the fighters. Right. So even the prelim fighters, if they've got fights coming up, I will always make time for them, and I'll always separate my training time for them. And obviously the championship fighters and the kids who've got big fights coming up, I generally close my training off for them. And they seem to be happy with that. And that's why I think they're happy with being in this environment and knowing the fact that they get that individual training and attention from me. It's not easy at times because I'm a family man as well, and I have various other jobs, you could say, within the sport of boxing. Yeah. But I will always make time for my fighters. And also bearing in mind, I need to make mention of this, I've got a strong team. Yeah. I've got a very strong team. Vusim Tolla's been with me 14 years. Sprinkonk Gwani is one of my assistant trainers. He was one of my first fighters. Yeah. And there's a lot of, the other thing I need to make mention is that we're very, very strong in the loyalty aspect in the fight game in my gym. And I think that's one of the secrets of our success, is that we're transparent, we tell it like it is, we give 100%, and there's a lot of trust and loyalty within the gym. Sorry to interrupt. And the guys who don't show that, unfortunately, I have to show them the door.
Would you say that perhaps this is the blueprint of how the rest of the country needs to look at in terms of not necessarily making it so much about the money, but making it about trying to develop the person?
So I'm gonna say this and answer you this way, that my feeling in life is success is based on successful relationships. Yeah. And that means with promoters. And everyone knows that, yes, I'm a Golden Gloves trainer, but I work with other promoters. And I have good relationship with those promoters. But it comes down to a trainer, fighter, manager situation is very, very delicate. Yeah. It's like a marriage. What you put in is what you get out. Yeah. And again, it's all based on relationships. If those relationships fall apart, the outcome and the success will not be the same as you want it to be. Yeah. If a fighter isn't happy with me or whatever the situation is, we sit down and we discuss. We're adults. You got to communicate. Yeah. And I think that my success personally, my success has been based purely on successful relationships. Look at Hecky Butler, been with me from the beginning. Reino Limmenberg, I took him when he had 5 fights. DJ Krill, I had in his 3rd or 4th fight. And you look at the relationships that we've built up. Marutim Talani, I still think he's one of the best fighters in the country. But I have a great relationship and rapport with him and my trainers. Yeah. So I think that's one of the keys. Success is based on relationships.
It's great that you mentioned that, because when we look at perhaps boxing globally, a lot of the top players, a lot of the top coaches, a lot of the top trainers have that kind of relationship. We can go as far back as Castamada and Tyson, and you're even looking at Klitschko's a former trainer before James Ali Bashir. There is that certain sense that you are your fighter and your fighter is you.
Correct.
And those generally breed champions.
So I always wanted to be a world boxing champion. I just, one or two personal issues. My mother said to me, "You're a good Jewish boy. I don't want to see you get in the ring," and blah, blah, blah. So the next step for me was to become a trainer. So I always wanted to become a champion. I don't think I was ever going to be good enough. I don't know if I could take a shot or whatever the situation was. But the next step would be to be a trainer. And I live vicariously through my fighters. So when they become champions, I'm a champion. I'm a champion trainer. When they lose, I lose. We lose as a team. It's not just the fighter, because it's a team effort at the end of the day. Individual sports, but a team situation before the fighter steps into the ring.
On a lighter note, of course, you could have went MMA, because you are equipped with a black belt, if I remember correctly.
A brown belt in judo, yeah.
In judo, yeah.
I often think, how would I have done if I would have entered a combat sport? And the question is, I don't really know. Yeah. But I think God has chosen this path for me. And I often think to myself, did I choose boxing or did boxing choose me? And I often, I don't know. I don't know, but I'm totally besotted in love with the sport. And from all aspects, from working with sponsors to working with promoters and fighters and being in the gym. And even the commercial people, obviously now people are stopping me wherever I go and they're saying, "What do you think of McGregor and Mayweather?" So that's, I get asked that on a daily basis. But what it does do is, just a little bit off the topic, it does get people talking about MMA and boxing, doesn't it? Yeah. But yeah, I just love what I do. Yeah. Love what I do.
It's amazing that you still have this passion that, I've known you for a long time, and that it's still there, given the fact that, perhaps boxing in a number of years, there's always this up and down. There's always this roller coaster ride. A fighter that you pick, then you think is going to be the next hot prospect, perhaps never gets there, or a fighter that you didn't perhaps originally consider makes it. There's always this emotional roller coaster that's attached to the sport. How do you deal with that kind of stress?
So early on in my career, I never dealt with it well. I hated losing. I still hate losing. It's life, right? Everyone wants to win. But early on, I used to interact a lot with my fighters, socially. Yeah. And when my fighters lost, it was devastating. Yeah. Since I've become older and a little bit more mature in my training and my approach with my fighters, I had that separation. And not to say that I don't care about my fighters or it's not a family situation. It's just that you need that space. You can't be too emotionally attached to certain fighters or any fighters, because inevitably, unless you're Floyd Mayweather who banks on his own, everyone's going to lose. That's just life. And I've handled it a lot better. And also, in fairness, I have a great wife. She's very understanding. She understands the sacrifices that I put into the sports. But at the end of the day, you know, when a fighter loses, yes, it's devastating for the fighter's bank balance, and because we all stand to lose money, etc. But at the end of the day, life goes on. And that song by Annie, "The sun will come out tomorrow." The bottom line is, we'll go to sleep that night depressed and upset, but the sun will come out the next day. And there's life after boxing. So, yeah, you do pin your hopes on a fighter, and you do think that he could or she could become something, and it's devastating when he or she doesn't. But at the end of the day, I've also realized that you can't depend on a person's chin for an income, that there's no guarantees in the fight game, and, you know, it's a dangerous sport. But going back is that there are going to be disappointments, but there are also going to be highs. I mean, I'll give you an example. I never thought DJ Krill, like when he first came here,
I remember seeing him on the bag when in your preliminary class at 1 o'clock. More than a few occasions when he was there training in drills, and you know, when you told me that he's actually, you know, he's going to fight, and then I saw footage of him, I went, holy moly.
Yeah, so when he was trained by Rupert van Asweg, and he had 3 fights. He had 2 wins and a loss. And Rupert came to me and said to me, "Listen, I'm leaving Joburg. Please take a look at this kid. Will you train him?" So I was like, you know, Rupert and I are friends, and I said, like, "Yeah, bring him around." I said, "Yeah, I'll take a look at him and I'll train him." And when he came here, I was like, man, what have I committed to here? Like, because I really didn't think he was really that good, you know. And then all of a sudden, we got him 1 or 2 opportunities in fights, and the next thing he started winning and winning more and showing a lot of improvement and dedication, and changed his style completely. And I thought, well, wait a minute, here's a kid that, you know, can become something. And then we started winning fights, and then we started winning 1 or 2 fights that people thought we were going to lose. And particularly last week, Sunday, we actually fought the fight before that against Ola Magusha from East London. A lot of people thought we were going to get killed in that fight. And then DJ actually boxed brilliantly to win a UD, a unanimous decision. And then it was time for him to make the step up, because he had cleaned up locally except for the SA champ. And obviously, you know, with DJ being promoted by Golden Gloves and the SA champ being promoted by another promoter, it's kind of difficult to make that fight happen for now. But the opportunity came, and I was like, geez, we've really matched DJ really tough. And I remember Ronnie saying to me, "Well, don't you want the fight?" I said, no, I want the fight, because I want the step up. I want to know how good my kid is. And he boxed beautifully last Sunday. So, like, he's probably one of my greatest pieces. You know, he had 3 amateur fights and he lost all 3. He came to me with a 2-1 record with no knockouts. We've had 11 fights together, 10 wins with 6 knockouts and a draw, which was highly contentious. And he's just amazing. He's really blossomed. So yeah, I mean, you just never know. You never know when a guy comes. It's the guys that you don't think are going to make it that boom,
really
become champ. Yeah, I mean,
really, wow.
Although I knew Hecky from when I laid eyes on him when he was an amateur. I knew he was special. I just knew it.
It's interesting that you say it. So, you know, want to tap into that a little bit. It's the guy that, you know, puts in the hard yards. Probably the guy that's, you know,
So it's often the guys who depend purely upon talent. That they don't work that hard, you know.
Yeah.
But also it's also environment. You know, I like the guys who come from a hardened background.
Yeah.
You know, the guys who are not spoiled, the guys who, you know, their families battle to eat at night. Those are the kind of fighters I want. Because I know they're hungry.
Yeah.
And I know that everything they've got in their life, they've had to work for, they've had to hustle for. Those are the fighters that I want to work with. Not the fighters that are spoiled, not the fighters that have got lots of money in the bank account. I'm not to say that those fighters can't make it. I'm saying I like the hungry, humble kids who come from a hardened background, who will appreciate and work hard for what they want and achieve in their careers.
I think Custom Motto was someone who said this, that you almost have to look, boxing, unlike other sports where it's a team environment and you can, boxing is essentially the street, and that's what it represents. It's the guys coming, with, like you said, who don't know where their next meal is, who don't have an idea of if they're going to make rent at the end of the month.
For sure. Someone once said to me, how long do I think boxing will survive and flourish for? So it's a simple question of, as long as there's townships, poverty, and ghettos, boxing will always survive. Boxing will always survive. And if you look, and you said earlier it goes through its dips, and it does go through its dips. You get good talented fighters, every so often, and then you get a bit of a drought when it comes to talent and so forth. But boxing will always survive provided there's hardened times. Yeah. And you look at even the richest of the rich guys like Manny Pacquiao and Floyd Mayweather, look where they started, man. Yeah. Look where they started. So boxing will always survive. And boxing has such a rich history. In fact, there's no greater history in sport than boxing. Yeah. 2000 BC. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's a very special sport. Hardened sport, cruel sport times, dangerous, we know the risks, but there's a science. You said something about the street element, but boxing is actually a sweet science. Boxing is actually a smart sport. Yeah. It's the fighters who take too many shots and hang around the sport too long that it dampens them and has an effect on their careers.
Yep. I'm looking at you now and I'm thinking about the fact that you alluded to, like in all things in life, you got to know when to kind of, call it a day. But how hard is it for you on the front line, man? You're sitting there and you're like, geez, I've got this. I mean, this guy, he's defended titles, he's done this, he's done that. How hard is it for you at that point when you know ahead of the fighter that perhaps it's the end of the road? That moment's got to be not easy.
You see it in the gym. Yeah. You see the reaction time slightly off. Yeah. And you see them taking 4 more shots than they would have done, say, a year or two previously. Yeah. And inevitably it's your job and responsibility to sit the fighter down, or to tell your fighter, look, you don't have much time left. You've got maybe 1 or 2 more fights left. Very often, I would say 9 or 8 out of 10 fighters will not listen and will go elsewhere, and that's okay. I have to have that conscience, knowing that I did the right thing. Yeah. And it's not always easy. Doing the right thing doesn't always feel right. Yeah. And having that conversation and being brutally honest isn't always right. I think I've become hardened over the years. Specifically when I just don't deal well with egos. We're going to change the subject slightly with regards to getting on with fighters. And I've told the fighter straight up, it's either been confrontationally, verbally, to the person's face, or via message, and we've been communicating via message. But that's also not easy because you're dealing with egos. I mean, some might say I have an ego, but at the end of the day, I have strict principles in my gym, and if you're not going to listen to them, and you're not going to listen, you hire me as your coach and your manager because I have an opinion. You should value my opinion. It's a team effort. But if someone's not going to listen, they must go somewhere else. It's hard for when you have such a close bond and a relationship with that fighter, and you know that it's time. Yeah.
There's no easy way to if we're looking at a viewer that's wanting to be a promoter, there's no really easy way to kind of let that down on an athlete that perhaps 2 years ago, 3 years ago at the Supreme. I can't imagine it. I would never like to be in your shoes in that regard.
It's also that pro fighter who always says, I'm a pro fighter and I could have had 1 more fight, or I'm getting ready for my next fight, but it's time. Like prime example would be Manny Pacquiao. I think it's time. Yeah. I think in a rematch maybe he could beat Horn. Maybe. I thought he won the first fight. I thought it was close. I thought the 7-5 either way was good for me. But it's time. You can see the Manny of old would have smoked him.
You mentioned that, and it's quite critical because I've seen Freddie Roach say that that Manny has, didn't talk to him or hasn't talked to him for some time after.
That's all been cleared up, and I think because Manny might know that Freddie might say it's time.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. That's got to. I mean, that's a similar situation to what you have to deal with a lot of the times as well. I mean, phenomenal champion, eight division world champion.
But here's another thing is that guys want opportunities, or guys want to train with us, and I mean, we had a situation a few weeks back where a guy came from another province and he wanted an opportunity, and I was phoned by someone and I said, yeah, I'll take a look at the kid, and he came in here. And before that, I got to tell you, I got a whole bunch of messages on WhatsApp telling me, this kid telling me that God's given him a gift and he's the best thing. I tell you, Pashkar, he came to my gym, he can't box. And I sat in my office and I said, listen, I don't mean to be rude or horrible. I feel like this is like an Idols audition, and I'm telling you straight that I'm saying no. But I get a lot of that, guys telling me that they want to fight and that they're really good. And unfortunately, to me, I mean, I'm not God. I have a certain standard in my head and what I want for talent. And not bearing in mind, not everyone can be a champion. We've discussed that. But there's a certain standard. And if a guy doesn't fit that standard or nature for what I want, I'm going to tell him that I'm not the right trainer for him. Yeah. And very often that fighter will go somewhere else, and I'll see him popping up at another gym. And good luck to him. And 9 out of 10 times I made the right call. You always, you make 1 or 2 wrong calls, the guy becomes champion, but that's life. You can't beat yourself up about it, but that's life.
Colin, how have you managed to comparatively now, and we know Freddie Roach, is been one of your idols, but how have you managed to sort of bridge the gap where promoters and trainers outside of South Africa know who you are? How have you managed that whereas other perhaps less professional, or I'm not going to say less professional, but that's not the right word, but guys who haven't managed to get their fighters overseas, get their fighters those kind of fights, how have you managed that and having to deal with that, and then deal with the egos that you have here that's saying, why is Colin getting the great fights?
Good question. I think I'm approachable.
Yeah.
And there's obviously a stigma attached to the fight game that you have to be a tough guy, or and I'm not that. I'm not that guy. I'm a gentleman. I don't like street violence. I'm not a violent person by nature. I'm in a violent sport. But and also bearing in mind that I've done the networking whilst I've been overseas. Yeah. I've attended conventions. I've met some very influential people. And a lot of that's attributed to my relationship with Golden Gloves and Rodney Berman. Yeah. And I'm not ashamed to say it. Yeah. Rodney's given me a very special life. And I'm very loyal to Golden Gloves. Yeah. And why will people say that is because exactly that. I'm a loyal person. I'm approachable. I'm smiling at low costs nothing. Being nice costs nothing. Yeah. And it pays off in the end. It pays off in the end. Obviously, there's friction between certain camps and myself, but at the end of the day, it's nothing personal. I try and get on with everyone. Yeah. I try and have as little issues in my life as possible, but being in the game that I'm in, it comes with the territory. You've got to accept that. I accept that not everyone likes me. I accept that people are jealous. I accept that I have haters out there. It's just part of being who I am. It's part of being successful. No one, people are envious. Yeah. And I say that humbly, and I'm not being arrogant about it. And I haven't really, I'll give you an example. Someone actually asked me after one of the last events, I think it was after one of the Conco events when you defend his championship, one of the journalists asked me, am I happy with the way my career is going? And it's the first time I've ever been asked that, and I answered him like this. My late father introduced me to the sport of boxing. And if he was on this earth now, and I had to ask him, Dad, how would you feel about my career? I would think he'd be happy. And that to me is my answer. So I haven't really had time to sit back and assess of all the champions we made over the years. And the success is like crazy, because in theory I should still be a bucket man. But I'm not. I'm still in my 30s. And I've got this a massive amount of success, but it's based on hard work. Hard work and relationships and being nice. There's nothing wrong with being nice.
Yeah. It's so great that you mentioned that, and I'm thinking especially about your dad, because, you know, always with father and son relationships, there's a preconceived notions of what dad would have wanted. Before off air, we were chatting and I was looking at your wall there behind, and the wall of honor. But really, it does fall down to, you know, that is the wall of honor in your mind. I would imagine. You know, that person's perspective. I mean, you've got Sugar Ray Leonard and all of these guys up there, but you know, that's the most important. Your family.
Yeah. So there's pictures of my wife and my kids. I could actually put a picture up of my daughter. She's nearly 8 months, and she finds out, she ever sees this interview maybe one day on YouTube, she'll kick my ass, but I've got to put a picture of her up. So it's my dad was my first teacher of the sport, you know, so I owe him. And then obviously my mother gave birth to me, so I have to give credit to her. But my wife and even my ex-wife and my wife are very, very close. And in fact, my ex-wife is the co-godmother of my daughter. So we're very much a very strong family. But I've got a good support structure. But the one thing that I'm very, very good at, and I preach, when it's weekend time, and it's hard for me because I'm so besotted with the sport, I try and switch off. So I interact with my friends who don't have any connections to boxing. And that's sometimes tough because big fights can consume me. I'm consumed right now about Heki Butler's world title shot in the Philippines. So it's a big thing for me at the moment. But, you know, changing a diaper, changing a nappy, that will certainly, you know,
humbles you right down.
I'll get your mind off of the fight game. But I'm very, very lucky that I've got the support structure that I do. I'm very blessed. I'd like to think that I've got a good balance. At the moment now, I'm very consumed with work, very consumed with the fight game and stuff. So, but yeah, I'm very lucky. And the other thing is that you need to understand is that my dad introduced me to the sport. He was my first teacher. He had a passion and he liked the sport. I have a passion, but I love the sport. And I think that's the difference, is that I've turned this into a business where I can pay my bills this way through sport, through boxing.
Most people would say that's pretty awesome, you know, that the fact that you can get to pay the bills with your talent and the thing that you love, so that's got to be high up there.
And the other thing is, of course, before closing, is that, like, look, I'm dressed. I'm wearing, this is as good as it's going to get. Guys have to wear suits and ties and stuff and be stuck behind a computer. I'm very blessed. I'm always active. I'm always on the go. And I love being here. I love being in the gym.
Yeah. Colin, thank you for taking the time, man,
to
chat to us. It was pretty awesome catching up with you, speaking to you, getting to know what it really takes, because it really is that you know, not that easy kind of sport to swallow down at the best of times.
Tough sport.
A lot of drama. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.